Amax Estates is your local area expert in North Kent and South London, specialising in residential sales, lettings and block management.
Hello everybody, and today I am absolutely delighted to be joined by Liana Loporto Browne. Now, those of you that don't know Liana, well, I will be very surprised because she's a very large figure in the property industry. She's also a very, very good friend of mine. So thank you so much, Liana, for joining me today.
My pleasure, Maxine. Thank you for having me. Coming all this way to see you in the pouring rain, which has been fun. But no, really excited to have a chat with you.
Thank you. And thank you for coming in the bad weather as well, and especially as I know your shoes and your feet are soaking wet because it's so wet today.
I should have warm boots, my fault. I went for comfort.
And why not indeed? But without further ado, I just want to ask you a few questions, a little bit about you. And I'd like to start, I mean, it's questions I know, but it might well be that other people don't know. About you and how did you end up? You come from Malta, you were born as a Maltese and you come from Malta and you ended up coming to the UK. So tell us a little bit about your journey and how you ended up in the UK.
Actually, I'm born in Ecuador. So born in Ecuador, spent the first 4 years of my life there, then moved to Malta. My parents are both Maltese. My mom's half Italian. So what I say normally is born in Ecuador, brought up in Malta, Italian mom, so I'm a proper true Londoner. So and you know, live in London and love it. But my journey to the UK was because I I started out in my estate agency career when I was 19 years old. So from the very bottom, making cups of tea and hanging off balconies and, you know, fixing boards and doing all of the things that, A to Z really, all of the things that the negotiator role entails. Worked my way up and to running my own branch, was in the capital city. And then we joined the EU. And I thought, wow, what an opportunity to join the most vibrant property market in the world. Why not move to London? So there I was, put in 4 applications for a job interview, flew over, did 3 interviews, got 3 offers, and I was offered the job with Foxtons. The only thing is, I didn't realise, you see, because it's quite different. The property market in Malta is quite different to the property market in the UK. Firstly, in Malta, we charge higher fees. So an agent charges 5% and the sole agency is 3.5%. And I'll pause a minute because 5% commission.
That's a lot. It's usually about 1 to 1.5% over here, or if you're lucky, you might get a bit more. So
I think it goes down to £500 in some instances.
Yeah.
So, but look, there are less transactions, but regardless, because of the higher fees, it's regarded as a profession. And I thought I had a fantastic career, and I've told you this story, but I'll share it. But one of the highlights was firstly selling one of the highest priced properties at the time in the company I was working for. And I sold it to a Frenchman. And the house, they had planned Napoleon's murder in the cellar. And this was like, this set me up for life. I was able to buy my first car. I was able to, put a deposit for my house. And these were all things that were an achievement in what was a flourishing and a really good career to be in and a profession. Yeah. So being an estate agent in Malta was something I was quite proud of. So then moving to the UK with Foxtons, it was when the whistleblower was in the Foxtons office in St. John's Wood, and she was sitting opposite me. And luckily, obviously, I was just shadowing at the time. But that was just, it was a real, it really made me question this massive move. I had packed up my flat. 3 weeks later, I was here, driving around in a Foxtons Mini, going like,
And on the wrong side of the road, I believe.
No, we were a British colony for 180 years, so we drive on. So for us, we're on the good side of the road for the Brits. But I stopped and I was just like, wow. And one day, walking out of my flat, and I had a brick thrown through my Foxton's window.
Really?
I was like, what's this? So all of that led me to Propertymark. But my journey with Foxton's was incredible because it gave me the grounding and the training I needed. It was the time when you work 9 to 5 on a Sunday.
Yeah.
And you worked 7 days a week. In fact, I was absolutely exhausted, but I was, at the time young enough, although not one of the youngest, because obviously I had already had that journey and 10 years in the industry before moving here. But it was great. And then I moved on to an independent agency in central London, in Regent's Park, Camden, and now I run my own business. But I suppose one of the toughest things coming from Malta to the UK was that realization that estate agents were not regarded in the same way. So I went on a mission to change the perception of our industry,
yes,
raise the bar in our industry. And with Propertymark, as we both know, yes, I surrounded myself with people that wanted to do the same.
Yes, yeah. And we are desperate to get Roper, aren't we? We really do want to see our industry professionalised because we do work hard at what we do. So I think that is kind of the next bar and something I think that we would all agree that we really do want to see.
Yeah, I mean education, but also just being able to work towards higher standards.
Yeah.
And everybody doing that collectively.
Everybody getting qualified, everybody talking about and doing exactly what we should be doing, the compliance. And I think that's pretty important.
And I know there's the hesitation with people getting qualified because it is, you need to go out and you need to start studying again. But it's now Propertymark is doing a lot with raising awareness with consumers, especially with the Phil Spencer affiliation. Yeah. But ultimately, this should be one of the first questions that consumers ask.
Yeah. Are you a member of a professional body? Absolutely, I totally agree with you. Well, going back to that story, so where did you find love? Was it in Foxton's?
It was. I met my husband in Foxton's on one of the incentive trips. I think the Blue Lagoon in Iceland, the country, not the supermarket. And we met in the aisle, duty free. So yes, my husband has been there now. He's been there for 17 years.
Yeah.
And I think Foxton's has a lot of that. The Foxton's relationship, because you couldn't meet anyone anywhere else because you just worked so hard at the time. But Foxton's was an incredible training grounds for someone like me to come in and learn a lot very quickly.
Yeah. So Foxton's a career, also love, and 2 children later.
And I was only meant to be here for a year.
Oh really? And you're still here all these years later.
20 years later, close to 20 years later.
Oh dear. So let's move on a little bit, and we shared the most fantastic journey between us from June 2021 to June of 2022, with me being the ALA president and you being the NAEA Propertymark president. And at that time, we probably spent more time together than we did actually with our own husbands and our own families. I think that we did over 40 engagements, not just Propertymark, but there were other events that we did between us. And we went all over the country. We literally went Scotland, Cornwall, and everywhere else in between, even Jersey, and we went to Ireland. And we had the most fantastic time. And obviously that was a time when I really got to know you well, and we forged a great relationship. Please let me know what that time meant to you.
It was a year of growth. It was a year of self-discovery. It was a year of living outside of my comfort zone, very comfortably uncomfortable a lot of the time. And again, having met people that are like-minded, that wanted to improve the standards in our industry, and always being at the forefront of what was going on in our industry. I loved it. We had so much fun. We traveled the UK, and I'd sometimes say this, whichever part of the country we were at, I always got nervous, but I always had butterflies. I learned how not to have a couple of drinks before you go up on stage, and had to speak in front of a room full of people. But it was so much fun. But mostly it was just knowing what was going on, knowing the legislation. Like you tell me in lettings, there's so much legislation to be aware of, and you sometimes think, if people aren't part of this, how do they know what's going on all the time? You really need to be one step ahead of the curve to know what's coming in next, what's happening next. And I think it's just those connections and those people that I met along the way that have meant so much. And that journey of just, just really finding out who you are. Because it's time away from the family. We spent a hell of a lot of time together, time away from your business, the juggle of all of that. And trying to make everything work. So it's a skill set. It's a new skill set which you learn, because you really need to learn how to prioritize, and you really need to learn how to just manage to juggle 5-6 things all at the same time in the same day. But it meant the world to me, and I wouldn't change it.
No, nor me. I think that we had a fantastic time, and it was literally post-COVID. So we'd just gone through a year of lockdown, an unprecedented year, and then we came in and it was literally full on. I remember the first couple of events.
We still had masks. Everybody had masks.
We were going everywhere, and there was maximum 25 people in the room when we first started going out.
Which wasn't a bad thing, because I remember it was the first bit of public speaking. But yes, gosh, it was just, it was like a new world, and it felt so scary at the time.
It did. And then, of course, you ended up getting COVID, and I ended quite a few events without you just before Christmas, including the ALA conference, where I missed you greatly at that time. But it was everybody, if you got COVID at that time, it was 10 days, you had to be stuck indoors for 10 days and you couldn't go anywhere.
No.
Do you remember that time, what happened with you and Phil Spencer? Tell our audience about that.
No, I was determined. I had COVID and we had this podcast and we were recording with Phil Spencer, and I was absolutely determined, and I was dying, like feeling so ill. So I dragged myself out of bed, put on my makeup, managed to blow dry my hair, got downstairs, put my suit on top, and then I had my pyjama bottoms and slippers on the bottom. And I told Phil Spencer, you wouldn't know, but I did actually tell him, look, I've got my pyjama bottoms. So I was so excited to record those podcasts with him, because it was a great opportunity to just have a chat and reach the consumers and tell them how important it is to have a qualified agent, someone that knows what they're talking about, somebody that is just really going to give you great advice. It's such an important move. So I had my pyjama bottoms and slippers on when I talked to Phil Spencer.
Indeed. I can't say the same thing, because I had to travel up to Propertymark head office, and I actually did my recording from their office and him from his office. And then I went on that day to Leeds conference, then I went on to the RAN conference, and then I went somewhere else. I can't remember where it was. It was an absolute whirlwind.
It becomes a whole blur, doesn't it?
And then 2 days later, I think I was doing the Excel, with the ALA conference. So it was full on at that time. While you were poorly, but at least you managed to get that done.
At least I managed to get that done, and I'd recommend it to anyone. Slippers and pyjama bottoms.
Absolutely.
And suit on top.
That was the only benefit of COVID, I think. I can't think of anything else, but
no.
At least you got it done. So after we finished our fantastic journey, and we did have a fantastic time together, you had some very, very sad news about your health, where you were diagnosed with breast cancer. And I can't imagine how devastating it must have actually been to you. But would you like to tell us a little bit about what happened? Because it was literally, I remember you saying to me when we were going along to events, you weren't feeling right and you kind of knew there was something, but you stuck out right through to the end, and it was literally at the end of the journey that you discovered that you were very poorly. So please tell us a little bit about it.
I think I was just tired, but then we were doing a hell of a lot. So I didn't exactly have symptoms, but it was the NAA conference, 30th of June. I remember that date. I had my suitcase in the car when I went to get the results. And yeah, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and nobody quite prepares you for a moment when you're sitting in a doctor's office being told you've got cancer. I lost my mum to cancer. She had breast cancer and then passed away 10 years later from a different kind of cancer, from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So for me, the moment I was diagnosed, I thought I was going to die. Yeah. And you know, it hasn't even been a year. Yeah. So because there were some hiccups and things that with the NHS, they had missed it the year before, and that's a whole different story. I then got rushed in. I had to have a double mastectomy, which in itself, the only way I can describe it is that you're in a washing machine and you feel like you're on fast forward and slow motion all at the same time, and you have to make all of these huge life-changing decisions, but you don't really know what you're doing. Telling my children was probably the hardest thing I'll ever have to do. We read a book with them, and we told them that this was something a mummy needed to deal with it. But they, their reaction, they've been amazing. There've been some, repercussions from it with my little one especially. But I think now that I've had it all clear, now that I've had the operation and I feel stronger after surgery, it's made me really stop and take a breath. And I realized that I was always the type of person, I used to think that my superpower was positivity. And I am a really positive person, and people, regard me and think, how can you always be so upbeat? But I feel like I was always planning and thinking about what was coming in the future and thinking about doing things in 10 years. And now it's just stopped me in my tracks and made me think, I'm just going to live for the now. I'm going to enjoy. And if there's anything I can share with people, it's just enjoy now. Just live today. Stop worrying about what's going to happen tomorrow, because you never know when something like this is going to happen.
No, this is true. Actually, it brings home, I was working out, I've been married 40 years in 2 years' time, and I was working out when I was going to have my holiday. Maybe I shouldn't.
Just do it now.
Yeah.
Just do this. And one thing I did as soon as I got, just do it now. Why wait till 2 years' time? You never know what's going to happen in 2 years' time.
You really don't. And it must have been such a shell shock to have actually gone through that. And yeah, I mean, as you say, it's not even been a year, but you look so amazing. And you've been like Tigger.
I've had the best out of a really rubbish situation.
Yeah.
So there are people that have to have months and months of chemotherapy. My tumor was sent to America, and they said that I didn't need chemo, which was massive. I need other kinds of treatments. I'm on some pills that affect and have all of these things. But I have had the best out of a really, really bad situation, and that's what I focus on every moment when you feel a bit down, because it gets, of course it's like,
it does. And it was a double mastectomy and then a reconstruction all at the same time, wasn't it? So a lot to actually go through all in one go. And as you say, that feeling of like you was in a washing machine, and that kind of like must have felt really surreal, like it wasn't really happening at the time.
Yeah, I do remember opening the box you sent me with a balloon that went up in the sky. And then you sent me something else the next day. And I was just like, and then you sent me a book to read. So,
have you ever read that book?
I've started it.
Louise Hay, How to Read Your Life. It's life-changing.
Yeah, so recommendation.
So
but what I did start doing is listening to lots of podcasts post my diagnosis. I used to listen to audiobooks, but podcasts, and I have a secret crush on Mel Robbins. I think she's great. So I can highly recommend that.
Yeah. Well, as I say, I mean, you've done so well, and to actually see the way that you've bounced back. You also are the chairman of or chairman,
Founder.
you run, founder of the Women in Estate Agency. And last week I had the pleasure of actually attending your first inaugural conference, and I've got to say, hats off to you. It was a fantastic, inspirational conference, and it wasn't your normal run-of-the-mill conference. It wasn't about what we do, it was about how we feel and about motivation and all of the things that we don't normally talk about, and I think that you really managed to pull that off, so well done for that. Fantastic conference, and looking forward to seeing great things moving forward, which I know is going to happen from you.
Thank you, Maxine. I think it was really important for this conference to be different, and I'm just so proud of what we managed to pull together, and I'm so proud of the industry for supporting, getting behind it. And there was such a need for something that was a bit different, so I'm really pleased with, I've been overwhelmed with the feedback that we have had.
I can imagine. It was so good.
Thank you.
I felt really honoured to have actually been there.
Thank you.
And seen that first one. Liana, you're such an inspirational woman, and you are always so positive. How do you manage to stay so positive and so motivated at all times?
I'm not. Okay, so this is one to answer, because I don't think I've learned how to do things that keep me positive. I'm naturally positive because I tend to look, it's always, you've got people that are glass half full, glass half empty, right? The motivation comes from wanting to be the best version of myself. But I think that's a bit of a cop-out to just say it like that, because it's kind of what you'd listen to or what you'd hear. But I think especially now, what I thought was me being positive before my diagnosis, now it's so different, because you see success in so many different ways, and people have determined success in so many different ways. So the way I keep positive is focusing on the things that really make me happy now, to putting even small goals, not big goals in place, achievable goals that make me happy. So I just focus on, and it's about keeping, if you've got something at the forefront of your mind, you're going to accomplish it. Yeah. If you put it at the back of your mind, it's going to lose importance. Yeah. So what I would say is, now I'm not frightened to make mistakes. I'm not frightened to go up and make a bit of a fool out of myself. And because courage brings experience.
Mistakes.
And you're human. Yes.
You are only human.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if I surround myself with people that love me and appreciate me for who I am, and know that whatever I do, I try and do it from a good place, and if those people around me see that, then that's, as long as I'm coming from a good place, then...
Positivity breeds positivity, doesn't it? You surround yourself by good people, then that actually is so infectious.
Yeah.
So I totally agree.
That love you, that want the best for you.
Yeah, I mean, last week quite a lot was sort of focused on mentoring. Do you have a mentor?
I have just reached out to Cheryl. I do have a mentor through Agents Together. It's very new.
Yeah.
Very new.
Because I was thinking the same thing. Having a mentor sounds as if you've got somebody that you can sort of offload and discuss. Then you're almost committing to something when you've got that mentor. So it's actually, learning from last week how important and how focused it has made some people. And I thought,
having a mentor, having a coach, and you need both, because they're very different, which is something that I didn't completely appreciate. And the one thing about the Women in Estate Agency group, when we started off, women are able to come, and the reason that's the only part that's closed off, because women somehow shy away of asking difficult questions when they are in front of men. You wouldn't put a post in Women in Estate Agency group on LinkedIn, and just because sometimes you feel like it's a bit silly to ask the question,
being congruent, actually asking what's really on your mind without feeling that there's going to be any kind of like comeback on you.
And yes, on
I've
social
noticed
media,
that,
we just
definitely.
want to look like we're,
Yeah.
we only put the good parts.
Yeah.
So with the group, you can go on, and if there's anything you're not sure about, you can ask a question, you can have it answered, and there's somebody on there that's going to know something about anything that you can ask. And I think that's been invaluable. That's been so incredible. And I think watching that, and now I hardly need to post anymore because everybody
they
goes
are
on.
posting
And
all the time. I mean, when you invited me to join, I think it was about 200 members. There's 2,500 members now. I mean, it's fantastic. The group has just grown and grown. The support network, the questions that people are actually putting out there, and the help, that self-help that they're actually giving, is fantastic. So it's actually achieving everything that your objective, what you wanted to achieve. So,
but to answer your question, mentor, coach, and also go out there and ask the questions on a group like ours, because it's such a relief to think I don't need to like struggle and find the answer myself. There's always someone, whatever I have a question about, that can answer it and can help me out.
And this generally isn't about commercial companies. This is actually about women supporting women, isn't it? About people helping each other without actually putting a price tag on it, which I think is one of the most important things. Through agent giving, that is all about actually helping each other, isn't it? So, and what a difference. There's plenty of people out there commercially that will promise you heaven and earth, but we don't need to do that through the good of your group, of what you've actually achieved. So well done for that.
Thank you.
So what message would you put out to all other women out there that thinking about maybe starting a business or maybe in business, and they feel that they're just sort of like, I don't know, fleeing a jam jar? They need to actually like be able to spread their wings and jump out the jam jar and actually be able to do something with their lives.
I think one of the huge takeaways from the conference last week was just do it. I think we do, from all the hundreds of interviews that I've done on the group, there's imposter syndrome, mum guilt, and some flexibility. Those have been the issues that have come up in many of the conversations with the incredible women that I speak to, through the interviews and through the group. So what I would say is, if anybody's thinking about starting their own business, pushing themselves out of their comfort zone, do it. Don't worry about, it's best to do it, fail and learn, than not do it at all. And if you are feeling nervous about something, it is most likely even the people that you think have never felt nerves, they've got it under control, they also have their own fears. Everybody's human, everybody has insecurities, everybody has fears. And if you don't push through that, then you have to push through that barrier. And once you're out there doing the things that make you slightly uncomfortable, they suddenly don't become comfortable. It's like video in agency. If you do it and you carry on doing it, and then you start suddenly, you're just, you couldn't get us off camera on that last week.
Oh, absolutely. To start with, it was all very.
I used to do 55 takes at the start. So yes, my advice would be, as Stephen Brown, the amazing Stephen Brown, said in our conference last week, just do it.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you. And also, there is nothing wrong with actually feeling nervous. In fact, it's very natural to feel nervous. If you're not nervous, then I think there's probably something actually a bit wrong. I still get those butterflies after all the years, and I'm standing there still training landlords and agents. But I think that's natural, and I think that's actually a good thing to think about. Don't worry about it, just go and do it. And
it's okay to be nice in business, and it's okay to be vulnerable. That's something which was really, it's okay to be yourself, it's okay to be vulnerable, because that's a quality which you can bring to the table that's different to anyone else. That's
right, and you can share your experiences as well, as we heard last week at the conference. So I've got one final question for you. Which is asked also by a number of other people. You and I were planning to do a bi-weekly podcast called the Property Powerhouse podcast. But obviously circumstances, everything else actually got in the way, and life moved on. So I'd like to ask, when are we likely to be able to start this podcast?
I have
popular demand.
I just I haven't even started the Women in Estate Agency interviews back up and running, and there's the podcast there, which also, and the podcast with you, that everything's been on hold, just because I used to manage to fit in 5-6 things in the same hour and juggle it all, and right now I'm not putting that pressure on myself.
No, that's fair.
So as soon as
maybe we should aim for a once every 4 weeks to start with.
Well, I think that's probably achievable. The once a week was completely, and is still completely unachievable.
And
right
I think
now.
if it was once a month, then we can actually talk about a lot more stuff that's actually happened
in the month,
and it'd probably be more useful. You committed to that now.
On camera.
Exactly. Anyway, I'm now going to conclude by saying thank you so much for coming in. You are absolutely amazing. You're an inspirational woman, and I know so many people love you for everything that you do, including me. So I'd like to give you a big hug. Mwah. Thank you for coming in.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Bye bye.